Welcome everyone, it's Caleb Reese at TennoArmory.com bringing you yet another Warframe build guide. Today we're going to be looking at Rhino and how to mod him to be able to use all of his abilities effectively. Now this is a bit different as we normally do specialized builds that I don't want to say it's a one-trick pony, but they use a limited amount of abilities that are maximized for a certain purpose. But today we're not going to do that. We're going to make them a little more well-rounded, and we want to showcase the build against some level 100 enemies. So I've spawned some Grenier here that you would normally find in a star chart, just with the exception of being level 100. I'm going to go ahead and simulate this, and actually I noticed I still have iron skin on. Let me go ahead and drop that. There we go. And now the few things that we're going to be looking out for is when we use iron skin, we want to make sure that we're able to take a good amount of damage with iron skin. With roar, we want to make sure the damage is noticeable when we use it, and the Rhino Stomp needs to have a good enough duration and range that it hits enough energy our enemies, and we're going to be able to use it effectively as a panic button to relieve pressure of our teammates if someone dies or if we're getting overwhelmed, things like that. So let's move over to the Vahek, or the Vacor Heck, and take out some enemies here. As you can see, the majority of these guys, even though level 100, the Heck does a good job of just one-shotting these guys or two-shotting them. One thing to note in this build, and I don't know if you can see it, oh you can, the bottom right you'll see it like power and use, power and use, power and use. I spam the 2 key whenever I get low, so that when my iron skin drops, it can get reapplied immediately. I didn't do something well there. Usually when the Rhino skin drops, you want to purposely go and use it and then run in front of all the mobs and don't move so they can get the maximum damage multiplier. So I'm waiting for them to pop. There we go. I'm going to go ahead and let the iron skin get beefed up a bit and then go hide. Alright, so now I'm going to go keep killing these guys as I normally would. I'm going to take a few more of these enemies out before I start showcasing the damage differences. Okay, I think we've killed enough guys so they don't bother us. I'm gonna go ahead and stomp, and I'm gonna walk up to this heavy gunner here and see how many hits it takes to kill him. 1, 2, 3, 3 hits, and each one of those hits took about a third of his health. So now we're gonna use the roar and show you how much damage we can do with the roar on. So let's go with his face. 1 hit, so it didn't like maybe 60% of his health, but did a lot more damage. And so obviously you can see the damage there is substantial. It's going to make a difference, right? Hitting a guy for 60% of his health instead of a third of his health is a lot different, right? As you can see, it does do double damage. Let's go jump up here so I can show you the range of his Rhino Stomp. I'm going to stomp here, and as you can see, most of the enemies, this guy right here is a little bit out of our range. He's at 41 meters, but all the rest of the guys are flying in the air. I'm going to go ahead and drop down and use it from the bottom, so we can get an idea of what this looks like. So all those guys, it's a pretty good range as you can see here. Let's go see if these enemies on this side got hit. Yeah, you can see them, they got hit over there. So it works pretty well, right? You're going to hit the majority guys on a tile. All the enemies are going to get knocked up. So I think we've achieved it. We can take a good amount of damage with our iron skin. Let me go ahead and have them drop my iron skin here and then get it beefed up and then kind of just sit here in front of them. Which is not something you would normally do in a mission. You wouldn't just stand in front of them, but I just want to show you that, like let's say for example we're using melee, right? Let me go ahead and melee some of these guys. So they're gonna be hitting me with more abilities now, unfortunately. Oh, you know what? I have the Naramon focused in. Now they're not gonna be able to hit me at all, unfortunately. That's too bad. Alright. I was going to showcase how much damage I can take if I would be meleeing them. I don't recommend doing that against level 100 enemies, but if you wanted to, I wanted to showcase that. Won't be able to, however, right now. But I think we've achieved it. I think our iron skin takes enough damage. I think our roar buffs us substantially, and I think the range on Rhino Stomp is great enough to affect a big enough of the arena, as well as have a good enough duration to relieve enough pressure for our team to pick up a downed enemy or a downed ally. So let's look at how we mod to achieve this. Let's go ahead and look over here at the mods. So right off the bat, you're going to notice something interesting. I don't use redirection or vitality, and I know this is going to start, ruffle a lot of feathers, but I want to explain myself. So whenever you use Iron Skin, you're not going to be taking damage to your health or your shield. So having vitality or redirection is not going to give you any benefit whatsoever. The only benefit is if it goes down and you're just sitting out in the open getting smashed on by lots of enemies, then you're going to go down, right? But I mean, if you're playing smart and you're using the terrain to your advantage and you're taking cover and stuff, you're not going to need it. You're just not going to need it, especially if you're using Rhino Stomp, if you do get covered in enemies, right? If you get swarmed. So I chose to buff Iron Skin instead of my health and shields, so that's why I use the armor and the steel fiber, the armored agility and steel fiber. And then to increase our roar and further increase the health of our Iron Skin, we're going to use 3 different power strength mods, which is Power Drift, the Transient Fortitude, and Intensify. Now the Transient Fortitude, the negative power duration, doesn't affect us too much. I'll show you the stats on the duration, but our duration of our Rhino Stomp and our roar is great enough that we won't have to spam any of the abilities. They're going to be effective when we use them, and that's really what we're aiming to do here. So that's why Transient Fortitude is okay. Now the reason why we're not using Blind Rage, however, is because the power efficiency is too great to not allow us to use our abilities comfortably, right? If we use Blind Rage, it would sit our power efficiency at 120. So now instead of using Rhino Stomp at 70 energy, it's going to be 120. So you use all of your abilities once and you've chunked out like more than half of your power, your energy. And that, I didn't like that. I wanted to be able to use your abilities comfortably and not have to be so frugal with them, right? Like almost never use them. So this build allows you to use your abilities more often. So coupled with Streamline, we're going to use Prime Flow. Again, we want that power to increase so that we can use our abilities more freely. And then finally, we're going to finish it off with the Stretch mod, just so we can reach more of our squad, more of our teammates with Roar, and to be able to reach more enemies with our Rhino Stomp. Now the Aura mod, you can use whatever you like. We use Steel Charge here. You honestly can use whatever you want. None of the Aura mods are really going to affect this build. Now let's go take a look at the stats here to see what these mods have done for us. So right off the bat, you're going to notice that Iron Skin is going to give us close to 6,000 ferrite armor. And then, like I said before, as long as you stand in front of some enemies whenever you apply it and stand still for a bit, you're going to get maybe on average like another 2,000-3,000 on this. So you'll be running around with a comfortable 8,000 health. Now, as long as you don't just stand in the open and take a bunch of damage, right? As long as you're taking cover and you're using Rhino Stomp effectively, this should be enough. You don't need a lot of health. You don't need shields. As you can just saw, I was standing in front of level 100 enemies and I was just fine. So this is good enough, I think. You don't need vitality or redirection. You don't need those. Now, Roar. As you can see, it gives us a two times damage multiplier. We saw the damage differences when I was shooting the heavy gunners in the face with the hack. It buffs us and your teammate for a duration of 38 seconds, which, like I said, I think it's enough. I think it's a big enough duration to where we're not having to spam the ability, and we get enough of an effect to make an impact. The range is great enough, so it's going to affect most of the enemies, or not most of the enemies, most of our squad, as it has the same range as Rhino Stomp. So you saw how big the range was, and the duration on Rhino Stomp is 10 seconds. I think it's a good enough panic button. It's a good enough duration where it's going to relieve some pressure, just enough to res people or to give us enough time to clear out all the enemies. The range is good enough to affect all the enemies on a tile, or the majority, depending on what tile you are. And the last thing I want to talk about is the damage type. Now, 1600 damage is not a lot, especially when you're fighting against higher level enemies. But for the majority of the star chart, with the exception of like endless defense and survival, that kind of stuff, 1600 damage is going to be pretty decent. It's going to be good against the infested, not so good against armored targets and the corpus because the damage type is explosion. But again, we're not really worried too much about for the damage. We're more worried about the duration, the range, making sure that the Roar and the Rhino Stomp are effective, and the Iron Skin can keep us alive. So hopefully I have put together a build that you like, that you see value in. I think we've achieved everything we set out to do. We've covered all our goals. You know, Iron Skin is able to keep us alive. The Roar is going to be able to buff our damage substantially, and our Rhino Stomp is going to be able to give us a little extra time to kill enemies or relieve some pressure off with crowd control. So that's the build, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, just go ahead and put it down in the comment box below. If you like it. If you don't, let us know. And if you have any free time, run on over to TennoArmory.com. We have more guides for you there. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.